The following episode contains descriptions of sexual assault and abuse and may not be appropriate for some audiences.
Hey everyone, this is Coach Phoenix.
And I'm Coach Gina.
And this is Toast with the Coaches. Cheers!
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for yet another episode of Perspective, the show where we drink and talk about life, the universe, and all that other jazz.
And again, I'm Coach Phoenix, founder and CEO of Role Model Life Coaching, where we focus on life transitions. At Role Model Life Coaching, we partner with our clients to navigate down the road of life towards your model self.
And I'm Coach Gina. I'm a certified life coach and founder of Clear Focus Coaching. I specialize in boundaries coaching, setting limits with those around you so you can make space for you. I also specialize in empowering women. I help women to recognize their strength and potential in work, life, and relationships so that they can face every day with confidence and intention.
So I'm so excited. This is our first international guest. I want to raise a toast. I want to raise a toast for a young woman. At first glance and first approach, you would think, man, she's drop dead gorgeous. However, that doesn't define this woman. That doesn't define this model, entrepreneur, survivor, fighter, trauma champion. London's own Alexa Taylor.
Cheers.
Oh God, I'm definitely going to take a sip to that.
Definitely gotta take a
Right?
sip
How
to
could
that.
you not drink to that
Oh my
introduction?
God, that was
So good.
amazing. Oh, I feel really touched. Thanks, Phoenix.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for blessing us with your time. Thank you for joining us today all the way across the water. I appreciate you. Welcome. Welcome to
Thank
Toast
you.
Coaching Perspectives.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this chat unfolds, and obviously chat with you guys. It's going to be awesome.
Definitely. So I know you're from London. However, last time we spoke, you was in Ibiza. So where are you located today? Because you're a jet setter. So where are you today?
Indeed. Today I'm actually back in my home. As you can see, it's my home kitchen. I'm back in London town.
Nice.
So are you from London? Tell us a little bit about your background. Did you grow up there? Where are you from?
Well, I guess I would say I'm sort of centered around this part of England. But growing up, I've sort of been a bit of a nomad, let's say. I first grew up sort of west of London, a little place called Camberley. And then I got to school age and moved across to a place called Norfolk, which is, if you're ever here, it's a beautiful part of the country. And then we kind of went back to west, where I sort of had my teenagers. And then sort of since my early 20s, I've been more around sort of London, as you kind of do in that sort of age, you house hop and go different parts of London. So now I've ended up in the East.
Nice. How was your your childhood? How was your upbringing? Who's Alexa prior to your life changing?
Oh, that's a good question. In some sense, it can be a tough one. I had quite a turbulent upbringing. My mum is a single parent. So since the age of 7, she raised my sister and I. Give her all the credit, I think, for how she held it together. And I think that's kind of helped me hold it together growing up.
Awesome.
We had some tough times of, no food on the table. We lived on a 1-bedroom flat and there was 3 of us. So it was tough, but she remained positive. So I think that definitely helped.
I'm sorry, what's a flat? For people that don't know what a flat is, we're in the USA and we call it apartments. So what's a flat? What's a flat for our viewers?
So I guess a flat is that. It's an apartment. So it's just, one level building, one level living space. So we just had we had 1 bedroom, 1 living room and a kitchen. So kind of the same, I think.
It sounds
I have
like
to
your
get
mom.
used to that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it's fun too, just to kind of learn the different terminology and stuff, from different languages and different parts of the world and
cultures,
everything. Just like,
different
yeah, the
perspectives.
different perspectives. What? No, it sounds like your mother was a really strong woman and that she was, a integral piece of your upbringing, obviously. So also just shout out to parents and single parents, like for holding it together and to continue to be there for their kids. Like shout out to you guys.
Yeah.
My mom was one of them. Cheers to that. Let's have toast.
Cheers.
Toast to parents.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that. Are you older? Is your sister older? How was that upbringing with your mom? What was that like?
So my sister is older. She's 3 years older. I think because I was still fairly young when my parents broke up, it's not that I then wasn't aware of what was going on, but I think I took to it very differently to, say, my sister. And growing up, she's struggled quite a lot with mental health, drug problems, very much a lot of self-esteem problems, which led to a lot of anxiety. And it's only sort of been, I think, in the last year that she's now taken a different route in her life, which is really positive and really amazing. And I think, again, like for my mum, like we've put her through the rounds and she always comes out fighting. And, I don't think we would if she hadn't been that way with us growing up. Like she's always been like, don't give up on your dreams. And she would always support us no matter what we chose to do in life. And I just think that loads of people always say to her, how do you do this? And how are you so positive? And it's just, she's a force of nature, I think, actually. And she doesn't give herself enough credit for that, actually.
Yeah, mothers do that, tend to do that sometimes. I'll give my mother credit all the time. One of the big things I was able to do was buy my mother a house, and I gave it to her. She was like, why would you do that? And I was like, man, like you did so much for me, and this is the beginning of how I could repay you. So I definitely agree with you. I definitely agree with you. So get into the meat of it. Let's take the elephant out the room and get right to it.
Yeah.
What was the moment that you say that changed your life and transitioned you into becoming the woman you are today?
So I was 21 when I was sexually assaulted. And I think sometimes as well, like... And
how old are you now? I'm sorry, how old are you now? So the viewers to understand that gap.
I'm 29 now, so 8 years, and it was recently sort of the 8-year anniversary, which is something I think is a topic of conversation when it comes to having anniversaries for assaults. But I think one of the things that I like to sort of, I'd not like to actually, but just to clarify that my assault was rape, because a lot of people do go through sexual assault, and it's not very different, but it's still different to rape. So I was 21 when it happened. I was at like a period in my life where I think I was rebelling a little bit, I'd actually say, because I'm actually naturally quite an introverted person. Like I would much rather curl up on a sofa and watch a movie all day than go off out and stuff like that. But it was, the age where you start getting into the London scene and going out, and there's very much a club culture here. I don't know if you have it over there, where it's like the tables and you have promoters and, the girls get into clubs for free. Do you get that kind of thing? Yeah, same sort of thing. Yeah. So we were going through that sort of like wild party phase, and I think very much for myself, because I'm quite like naturally shy and
hold on, so I'm sorry, where did this rebellious stage come from? Like what caused this?
I think it was maybe just that sort of like coming of age thing. Oh, okay. I don't know, like in terms of
freedom, like that age, like I'm 21, I can do what I want to do. You can't tell me anything. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And my sister's very much like the opposite. I think she's definitely, I do like going out and stuff, but I think just at that point it was how my situation came about. I think it was very much, I was going into a bit of a like, I was trying to sort of be something I maybe wasn't a little bit, because I do enjoy going out and stuff, but not like the crazy wild stuff. It wasn't what I did every week and things, but I was doing it at that age when I think, most young 20-year-olds do. And it was fun, but when I think of the sort of night in question, well, not in question, but night in conversation, let's say, I would say night in question. I think that's just like a response. But the night that it happened, I like, even just for myself, I know it was almost like I just wanted like I wanted to be like center of attention for a moment, and it was just, I don't know, it was just a strange time, I think. Anyway, I'd recently sort of like had a break with an ex-partner, and then we were sort of still trying to like figure things out. So it was all just like a bit of a weird time. And I think that's something I've only recently realized myself, that actually that time, I think, just because I ended up getting blind drunk, like literally just absolutely paralytic. And I think for me to get into those states, it was just, I don't care anymore, I'm just gonna go crazy. And and it's just, you kind of, I think you maybe everyone goes to that phase, but like I think actually when I think of me, like I don't like necessarily doing that. And it's just that's something I've realized that recently over my my journey, I guess.
So can you take us back to the night a little bit? Like, how did the night start off, and how did things progress?
So actually, it's actually quite a tricky one. I think this is one of the things that is so hard about it in general, because there is genuinely a lot I just don't know or remember of that night. And I guess in some sense, the more you go on, it is maybe like a way that, a coping mechanism that your brain is.
No, you know what it is? No,
shut off.
So I suffer from PTSD, and that's the symptom of PTSD, is that those traumatic incidents, you start to forget bits and pieces and can't connect the dots. And it's because I in my personal opinion, I think it's because you, like you said, it's a coping mechanism that you try to forget it. So in forgetting it, you can't, like sometimes I remember one part, but then can't remember another part if I retell the same story. So no, I understand that. So I definitely get that. That happen to you when you have something like a traumatic experience. But continue, please.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So it's basically, I think it was a typical sort of like London night, as it were, in those days, and we were getting up and getting dressed up to go out, and I'd gone out and bought like a new dress and some new heels. Like I'd got these ridiculous like wedges, and I'm fairly stable in high shoes, I think, because of work.
Oh, so you was feeling yourself. You was looking good.
I was just like, I'm just going for it. And in terms of the promoter table situation, like that wasn't new to me, but we then actually got put onto a private table. And even just then trying to sort of like recall this when I was going through the court case, like I don't really actually remember how that happened. Like, it's the promoters that do it, but I don't remember that. And one of the things when going through the court trial is they'll ask you these questions, and when you don't remember, whether it's because of the coping mechanism or actually genuinely at the time I was so out of it. There was no way I could actually detail stuff. And one of the hardest parts as well is like when little things start to come back to you. Like for one instance, I remember at one point having a glass of champagne or a glass of bubbles in my hand, and I do not remember at what point in the night that was, but it then turned out that the guy that did this to me, it was him, and I didn't know that. So for me, I thought when I met him, we were outside at the club, and that was the first sort of ever detail I could give that was the person. It wasn't someone that I could hand on my heart say I'd met them before that. But that, for me, it's very hard, because it's like, for me, I know that's how I know how drunk I was. Because these are the kind of details you have to recall when you're then sat with the police. So it's just being able to then not know that was probably one of the most infuriating parts of it. So I guess sort of like my recall of it, there's probably like 5 different parts of the whole evening that I remember, and one, I don't remember arriving at the club. So again, I just don't know if that's because of the accumulation of alcohol that I had over that time in that night. It all just left me. It's very hard in that sense to kind of be able to say, but that drink was one of them. I think I remember having a vague memory of like being in the first part of the club, like when you come in, there was like a wall, and then that was where our like initial booth was, and I don't remember leaving, but then I remember talking to the guys on the streets, and then I remember the bathroom of the place that I was at the time, and then I remember waking up. They are literally the only sort of details that I can remember. And at some points then, it's quite hard because you're not meant to talk about stuff. Like as soon as you go to the police, especially if they feel like it's a ghost trial, they're like, you shouldn't talk about any details that goes on within the trial. But you have to wait a whole year nearly for a trial. So at that point, it's then like, well, of course, you've had vague conversations between my sister and I. My sister was there the night it happened. So at the time, it was when Drake was massive, and we were like huge Drake fans, like love his music so much, and I listen to it all the time. And the biggest song of the time was Crew Love, and I remember my sister saying to me, "Oh, we were sat drinking with the guys at his house, listening to Cruel Love," and I just it made it kind of, I don't know the word to describe it. It just literally made me like close up because I don't remember that, and that was one of my favorite songs. And then all of a sudden,
now you can't even enjoy that song anymore.
I can now. I've actually got to a point where I can, but oh my gosh,
you're a fucking trauma champion. You heard? That's why.
Exactly.
So, can we go back to that night a little bit? So you were having drinks with your friends, and so I'm trying to piece this together a little bit. So,
Sure.
were you roofied? Were you drugged, or was it simply that it was you had too many drinks?
I think the initial thought is that I was, and sort of I guess things that I've learned after is that once you are, it leaves your system super quick. So one of the things they were really intent on me knowing was how many times I peed since I'd left, and I was like, I genuinely don't remember, or how many times I peed since we got to the house. And it's one of the things I literally don't know. And I, in some sense, I try, I guess, take comfort in thinking maybe I was, and it had left my system by the point I went to the police, because by the time I went to the police, it was the following evening, but it was 5 p.m. So it had already been at least 12 hours since I'd woken up. So if I had been roofied, it would have been a lot earlier in the night, because it could have been that I had when they gave me the drink. Right. And that, I guess, was one of the things that the police were very much this is where we really could have a case, because a lot of girls that do report, they're instantly told you don't have enough evidence. There isn't, or you have evidence, but it's not enough to be able to create a trial. Whereas the details that we had, there was. So, whether that was one of them, my case officer, he's always been very open in communication after that. I could go back and actually talk to them about my notes and what was taken to court and things like that. And I'm always sat on the fence, and it's something that I think it might still be something I'll go back to, but I sometimes, do I want to know things that I don't remember? It's quite a tough one.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's hard.
It is definitely hard. So let's go back to that night. So y'all at the house, you with your sister, you with the guys, drinking, I guess having fun. You're kind of you had too many drinks, so you're kind of out of it. What happened next? Can you tell us, trying to go into that story on, do you remember what happened, or what happened from when you was drinking until you report at 5 o'clock the next evening, you report the incident to the cops? Can you take us through that timeline?
I guess a little bit. So some of it will come from stuff that I've been told, either from my sister and the police itself, was that we were in this house, and one of the distinct things that I can remember was the bathroom was brown. And it's such a weird thing to remember, but it was just one of the things. And I'd actually gone to the toilet and I fell into the shower. And it's just because at that point I was so drunk. And my sister came into the bathroom to come and get me, because she obviously heard me fall, and I couldn't walk. At that point I was then totally done. I then wet myself.
This is before the incident? This is before or after the incident?
Yeah, before.
Okay.
So then I threw up all down myself, but they had to put me in the shower, and he actually helped. So he was totally aware of how drunk or out of it I was. But obviously, because at this point then I'm covered in sick and urine, they took my clothes off and then put me into a bedroom to sleep, because obviously there was no way I could join in the parties. So that was, and some of that is sort of vague notions of memory, but that's more come from what my sister and I talked about after, because then I was like, I kind of remember this, but I don't know. So my sister was a massive part of the he said, she said that it comes down to it at the end of the day, because she was the one that had the memory of it all and how bad I was. I was then put to bed, and then when I woke up, I woke up to him raping me. So it was a very...
so you woke up to him actually inside you? Yeah.
So there was just no way that I was in any shape or form...
No, but of course not, because it's funny, because you said that he helped you into the bathtub. Mm-hmm. So obviously he see that you freaking sick and you smell like piss. And for him to even try to so if I'm on trial, right, say I'm a juror and and he's on trial and I got to decide if he's guilty or not. once I found out, the prosecutor asked him like, hey, did you know that she piss on herself? Were you there? Did you notice that? And he was like, yeah, I seen when she pissed on herself. Boy, you're a rapist. Why would you even want a girl that smell like urine? Like that shit, like right
Well,
there.
yeah, if somebody's
like what the, it's crazy.
yeah, like if somebody's so sick, like somebody's that sick, you know, then it's like, well,
disgusting.
Yeah.
That person is obviously not in a good condition to be able to give consent. Like that's not like if you can't control bodily functions, if you're having like that bad of a night, like you're not giving consent to anybody. Putting you to bed is one thing. Like that's I feel like the responsible thing to do. Get you cleaned up, put that person to bed, make sure that they're safe, make sure that they're comfortable, and that they, you know, maybe have some water and some aspirin on their nightstand. Like that's what you do, and then you leave. Like that person
should be it.
Crazy.
So you wake up and you're in the middle of this traumatic situation, and then what happens?
So I literally freaked out straight away. I literally just like I went into you know, when they talk, it's like the flight or fright, flight or fright, but then there's now a freeze. Yeah. So everyone's always talked about the fight or fright, but I think I very much went into not fight but run. Like I literally just freaked. I literally was like, I can't remember if I was then shouting for my sister, but I just went into like hysterics straight away. And then my sister come in and I was like, we need to get out, we need to get out, we need to get out. I just then like, get me out of here kind of thing. One of the other guys that was there, who my sister had been with, they literally then came in and gave us like, God, I can't remember, like hundreds of pounds of money and like £50 notes, and were like, get a cab. They actually rang the cab. So basically they got us a taxi, and I then have like this memory of just laying in the taxi on my sister's lap, just in absolute hysterics.
Just real quick, like what was the response of this guy who was doing this to you when you like started freaking out and calling to your sister? Like, did he stop? Was he like, no, it's cool, don't worry about it? Or like what?
No, he stopped. Yeah, like he then like vaguely, like I remember he then got off, stood up, and then I don't remember if he tried to like calm me down, but he was talking to me, but I was just in total panic. I don't know what the hell he said to me. But he then left and I never saw him again. So that was all. I think, you know, I was literally freaking out, so he knew to leave. So that was I guess the night then, and it's actually recently, since I've launched what I'm doing now, that my sister and I have been able to talk some more in detail, and I didn't realize that I had actually told her then, whereas I thought I told her the next day, because we then basically went back to our friend's house. They were out with us at the time, but they didn't come back to the house after, but they we then went to hers, and then I literally slept like a solid 12 hours, and then woke up at like 5:30 the following day. And then I remember my sister saying to me, like, what happened? And then I just said, I was like, I woke up and he was doing that to me. And I was like, to be able to say the word, especially in that moment, it's just, you don't believe it's happened. You do go into like, has that actually just happened? Like, shit.
You kind of doubt yourself, and you're like, well, oh my God, maybe it didn't happen the way I thought. Maybe if I think back, maybe I did engage in that. Well, I don't know. Yeah,
especially because you don't remember. And I remember then having to have these conversations with my sister. I was like, did I give him any signal that I wanted sex? And she was like, no. So it's just, you kind of, it's really hard. It's really hard to come to terms with that. Actually, that's like just happened. So then that was that. And because we were in London at the time, this was when we lived west of London. It's probably like, just over an hour to get home. I remember because my sister was in her car and I was in mine, and just like driving down the motorway, and I just then started crying, and I was like, oh my God, like this is real. And I was rekindling a relationship with my ex-partner at the time. We'd sort of been back together for like 2 weeks, let's say. And I remember ringing him and then having to tell him, and I was like, oh my God, I was like, how the hell am I going to say this? Like, this is just so crazy right now. He then came over straight away and was just like, look, like, you know, when you're raped, because I was then obviously at that point, I was like, do I go to the police? Do I not? Like, what do I do? Like, I just either have to sit back and just forget it, or I fight for what's just been done. And then I was, the three of us had a conversation in terms of this is what will happen. And I was like, no, I'm going to go to the police. I was like, no,
Wow.
I am, because I think I'm so headstrong on sort of like rights and wrongs.
Someone has to be held accountable. And you believe that. Yeah, wholeheartedly, it sounds like. So after you went to the police, what was that process like? Were you able to identify the individual? Did he do time? Were they able to arrest him? Like, what happened to him?
Yeah, I mean, that process was really long, because it's in terms of having to get the evidence and stuff, like the first court trial wasn't until just under a year after it happened.
A year later, and they told you not to say anything.
Yeah, well, yeah, so yeah, that's when they're then like, you can't talk about it. I think within that year, I just tried like my best to almost put it behind me, because you have to wait. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, you don't know if you're going to get, I think in some sense, when I reported it, I was thinking, oh, it's never going to go anywhere. Like, they never do. There's never enough evidence. You're just a drunk girl. It's against him. But just the amount of evidence that stacked up, they were like, yeah, like, we can get him for this. And, I was told that like, he could get 3 to 4 years in prison. I was like, yes. I was like, this is so exciting. Like, in a way, I was like, so you bloody well should. Like, and the sort of process, I think, on his side, so he's actually American. And he was, staying in.
Was he there visiting?
Yeah. And I think it was just like a holiday, or I don't really know. But they were renting, I don't know if it was his family or anything like that, but he, from what I've learned, was from a very wealthy family. His dad, I think, was running like an oil company or something along those lines. Knowing he was American, he couldn't go home. He got arrested on the airplane, which just makes me feel like, yes, like imagine that.
Oh, he was embarrassed.
Airport. And he would have been dragged out the airport. Yeah.
So close, but no cigar. Yeah.
Yeah, literally. And he did. And like, for me, that gives me like a real sense of like satisfaction. Like, you thought you were going to get away with this, and the Met Police pulled you out of the airport because your passport got flagged up. So like, that instantly just made me feel really good. And then because it was like the summer, he then obviously couldn't leave the UK, and they paid £250,000 to have him home for Christmas for 14 days. And like, just stuff like that. Yeah, it's crazy actually, like how much power they can have to be like, no, like, you have really fucked up. Like, here, you are going through the court system. Like, you are staying put. So his education would have been messed up. Like, he's lost his whole livelihood back in America. Like, there's a lot of things that I kind of feel like, that's where I know that my life has been a struggle since. But actually, it kind of would have been shit for him too.
Well, but that's helps. The point, though, I think, is that like, when those kinds of things happen to people, when they go through those traumatic experiences, you spent however much time, 5 minutes, half an hour, however much time, completely ruining an individual's life. Like, that is something you have to live with for the rest of your life. And, you look at it, it's like, oh, well, this really ruined his education and his opportunity for jobs. Like, but nobody made him do this. Like, this was his choice, and he ruined somebody else's life. So that's justice, in my opinion. Like, he made that choice to ruin your life and his. Like, that's not something you did to him. That's a choice he made.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, I don't feel bad about that. Like, for me, that's just a thing of like, you haven't just now been able to go on your merry way because I decided to be too afraid of the system to not do it. And it just, in some sense, it makes me feel really sad for the women and the girls that either don't feel they can report, or they report and they never get to fight it. Yeah. Because then that person just walks away.
And it's so messed up too. Like you say, like, it can take up to a year, sometimes longer. You can't talk about it. And the details too, like having the PTSD can work against you in those situations, because you're like, oh, I remember this. And then you're like, actually, that's not quite how it happened. This happened. And then the other lawyers are like, well, see, she doesn't actually remember. She doesn't actually remember what happened. So you can't believe anything that she said. Yeah. So, all of these details and all of these things that you, as a victim, have to go through. I mean, the medical procedures that you have to go through to have any proof, that, speaking to the police, being able to prove this case, not being able to talk about it. Like, it's like going through a trauma in and of itself to go through that process.
Yeah. 100%. And that's, again, one of the other things that a lot of stuff that, especially with the stuff I'm doing now, that I come across, is like, so many girls are just like, that whole process was actually then worse than the assault itself because of what they make you think and make you feel. And it's just, I find it absolutely astounding. Like I feel like it's one of the very few things where you can go to court and you're the one that's the bad person. You're the one that's done wrong. And it's like, this person has just gone through the most horrific things. It's one level down to murder. And yet they treat you like you're the murderer. And it's just...
Exactly. Well, are you sure that you were murdered? Because, I mean, like...
like, it's like, you know, if someone gets burgled, you're not going to come around and be like, oh, well, you did leave, you know, your bifold doors there for people to look through. It's kind of
you were carrying your wallet and it had money in it. So you were kind of asking to be robbed. I mean...
Yeah, it's just, that whole process is mind-blowing.
I can only imagine, man. Power to you, Alexa. So you went through this process. He had this. He was American. He was someone of influence. He had money and connections. How did that process, the legal process, go? What was the result of that?
So he obviously had a very, very, very good defense team. But the first court case was a hung jury, which was, I think I expected it to be not guilty, or I hadn't really prepared myself for anything other than that. So when it was hung, I then was like, okay, so what happens now? And they're like, we go again. And I was like, what? And it's,
go around one more time.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, okay, so then what's the process? You don't have to wait as long for the next trial because they kind of got the majority of the stuff. So it was like another 5 months after that one. But
so not 12 months, 5 months.
Yeah. So yeah,
but it's now been almost a year and a half since that instance.
Exactly.
The situation happened. Yeah.
So then with that, it's then the defense team took a very different approach. That was what killed me in terms of like being myself after, because they then just made out that I was an absolute slut, whore. I did this all the time. And they basically like went through my Facebook accounts, my social media accounts, and they just then painted this picture of both basically my sister and I just being these two, you know, whatever, and just it destroyed everyone.
That's maddening. Alexa, how dare you enjoy having drinks with your friend? How dare you, as an early 20s early 20s female, enjoy going out? And how dare you enjoy having sex? Like, how dare you?
Yeah,
so
ridiculous.
I heard something deeper than this. So let's take it back some, because you mentioned something earlier, Alexa, and I think it all ties in. So when you began this, we began having this conversation in our little happy hour that we're having. You mentioned at the particular time, so at the time of the incident, you was wild, you was out of your mind as far as like you didn't really know what you wanted in life. You was kind of looking for attention because you just broke up with like a significant other. So you was kind of like attention seeking. You was drinking a lot. You was being a 21-year-old. So yeah, you wasn't a slut or a whore, but you was confused. And it's funny that you mentioned that. One of my specialties in America, I'm actually global. So if you're in the UK, you in London, anywhere in Europe, and you're looking at this, check out the website, links below. Transitioning into adulthood, you didn't have those tangible. I mean, you said you had a strong mother. So you had your mother, you had that individual that was strong and told you that work ethic and that willpower. However, you were still living your life and being human, being a 21-year-old, which I was, Gina was, and all our viewers, y'all was 21 as well. Yeah. And 21, you don't know it all, you don't have it all. So you was being human. And basically as we process through that circle, as what I'm hearing is that they try to use you being 21, being human, you being a normal person that's going through normal issues in that transition against you, to say that, hey, you wanted this, you asked for it because you was trying to figure out life. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, you literally just nailed that. And it's amazing for you to pick up on that, because it was like, that was then what my, my lawyer at the time, my barrister, was then like, she's a 21-year-old girl. Of course she's going to go out and get a little bit too drunk sometimes. And, but at the end of the day, I expected to have my head around the toilet bowl, but then asleep on my bed. Like, that's kind of everybody does go through that process, and it's just, I think for me, that's what then hurt in the sense of then I think, well, that kind of maybe wasn't me because I'm quite a quiet person, like I'm quite an introvert, but at the same time, I just think, well, I should be able to have fun. Like, it's amazing what it does to you.
But the thing that's maddening in addition to that for me is that in order for you to not be a victim, you have to be perfect. You have to be a straight A student who doesn't drink, who doesn't party, who doesn't doesn't enjoy sex. Like, you are either not in a relationship or you're in a monogamous relationship. Like, you have to be this picture perfect person. Otherwise, you are asking for it. The idea of somebody saying like, oh, you're a slut, you're a whore. So what? A guy goes out and does that, and he's a player. He's, you know, like he's getting his piece of ass, you know, whatever. Like, it's like props to you, high fives and ass slaps. Like, that's great. But when it's a girl, it's like, oh, well, because you enjoy sex or because, like, you know, whatever, you've had partners, like, well, then you deserve to be raped. And no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I can be a slut and not deserve to be raped at the same time. Thank you very much.
That's like one of my biggest things about it. It's like that now it's like rape culture and stuff, and how it's all perceived, because it's like there are prostitutes that they're sex workers, but it still doesn't mean they're being on, they're asked to be raped. And there's so many interesting articles and things that I've read about stuff around that now, and I'm just like, you know, it's got to change. Like, people have got to understand what it actually means, and it's just, it's a tricky area.
I definitely want to get to that. So before we get into that, quick question, you got is a closed-ended question. So did he get off? Was he punished or did he get off?
No, he got not guilty the second time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even with all the evidence.
Yeah. So a lot of it and I guess this is something that's then come to light more recently, is I think actually what it came down to in the end was my sister's account and his account, because there wasn't much I could give in terms of like specific details where she could. And they basically then honed in on her and put her at blame, which was just outrageous, like absolutely outrageous. So they were then saying that basically she was an absolute slut and whore as well, because she was much more known for being the party girl and the crazy one, and she has been since quite a young age. So she was messaging someone at the time at that night saying how she had never seen me like this, like how ill I was and how unconscious I was. And basically they said that she was sending these messages to the guy that she was with because she wanted to sleep with the guy that we were with. So
it's funny that you said that, and I was going to play devil's advocate. So I was going to say, your sister helped you to the room and she made sure you were sleeping. But where was she, and why wasn't she just with you? Or why didn't y'all just leave?
Yeah, that's a really hard question. And I think with my sister hearing that, it might send her doolally, because that's one of the things I remember selfishly asking one time, like, if I was that ill, like, why didn't you get me out of there? But at that point, like, she's only 23, 24. Like, she's a young girl as well. Like, and, you know, we were at this mini after party. Like, it's kind of, you know,
around these rich guys, you think she got caught up in the hype and the hoopla?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think you just don't expect those things are going to happen. You know, like retrospect is 2020 when it's like, well, why did you, you know, not hit your brakes earlier when you're on the highway and, you know, you ran into this person? And it's like, well, yes, if I had thought to react sooner and hadn't been changing the radio channel and, like, you know, anything that happens to you in your life that's an accident or a traumatic incident or whatever it is, it's like you look back and you think of all the things you possibly could have done. Yeah. But those things happen to all of us. And it's like, well, yeah, I could have done a million things differently. I didn't think about it. There was all of these things happening, and that's just not what happened.
And it's not down to my sister. Like, it's not her. It was
she wasn't the one who raped you.
I was just playing devil's advocate, but no.
That's
it's not her fault. She wasn't the one on trial, so her life shouldn't have been attacked, and her reasoning for doing something shouldn't have been on the reason why he got off or not. You know, he wasn't able to justify. You wasn't able to clarify and provide clarity on what happened that night. However, your sister could tell her side of the story the best she can. Outside of that, her thought process wasn't on trial. They didn't have anything to do with it. But so I definitely agree. Yeah. So moving on, after you finding out, like, man, this sucks. He got off because of money and a good defense team. They try to attack my sister. It's been freaking more than 18 months. I know your mind is going crazy. What type of treatment were you going through to try to help yourself? And how do you stumble across becoming a trauma champion after this traumatic experience?
So I guess taking it back slightly, after it happened, I was very much someone that was like, I'm just going to move on with my life. I just need to continue. Like, I still have a day-to-day job. I still have a life to live. Like, I kind of carried on in that sense. And then it was probably about 6 months in, the PTSD kicked in. And I started having nightmares. I was wetting the bed. So it all got heavy. And then I was like, okay, I need help. And I started seeing a counsellor at the charity that we have here called Rape Crisis. And at the time, like, it was just, I typed into a Google search, what help can you get for it, sort of thing. And I just knew I needed to talk about it. So I then did that until I was 24. So that was then through the process of the courts, and then for about a year or so after. So that was like a good 3 years of that. And then I actually went traveling, and started I got to a point where the talking, I was done talking. I was like, I just kind of, it's not that, I just felt like I got to a bit like I've dealt with all the steps, and I'm just now like quite calm about it in a way. I sort of found other ways to help, such as journaling. That was a massive thing for me, journaling. I also then deduced to look at doing self-defense classes. I definitely went through a period of just being petrified of being out on the streets. So it was also when I started modeling. So I hated going into town. I hated going into London because I had to go to castings and stuff like that. And I remember my sisters used to come along with me to make me feel better. But so there was all these sort of different steps and processes I took for a few years.
Yeah. Can we pause? I want to go back to you kind of getting into the modeling career too, because I know that a lot of victims, after they've gone through, especially that type of traumatic situation, that there's a lot of shame that follows them. There's a lot of uncomfortable feelings around their body, around their sexuality. So it's super interesting to me. And I'm also just in awe of that you were able to take that and turn that into something that you enjoy doing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I think if anything, that was almost like a facade in a way. I think that was part of maybe my denial process that had happened, because I would be doing these things, and it was almost then well, if people can look at my body in a way that's judging for something else, at least it's safe almost. I think I was then being okay, well, no, I can be comfortable with this because it's for a complete different thing and different reason. Yeah. And
you're in control of it.
Yes. Exactly. I also went through a massive period of 2 periods at the same time, I'd say. One of being very lost. I just was I don't know who I am. And so I was just kind of doing everything, and just seeing what felt comfortable or not. I'd previously been working with children. I was working in a nursery. I left that job. I'd always wanted to be a nanny. And I think it just it was almost I'm done with being in this area, and just all sorts of things. I went through a lot of transitions all at the same time.
That old Alexa died after the trial, and then now you're trying to find a new purpose to live in, your new self. You're trying to find who you are.
Yeah, in some sense, because I very much knew, from a young age, I wanted to work with children, so I was always doing that. But I then went into an unhealthy relationship with work, and I was doing what's called night nannying. I don't know if you have night nannies over there, but it's basically where you would come in, I'd go into people's homes and then basically look after newborn babies overnight. So I would
instead of the parent or the mother or the father being a person that wakes up every 2 hours, every 4 hours, that was your job.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I think in some sense it was almost a way that I kind of didn't have to deal with it, because I was always at work, and one of the biggest things I hated was going to sleep. It was just an absolute no-go for me. So being able to work 5 nights a week, and at that point you're with something that's so vulnerable and innocent, that it made me feel comforted, that I was just there is goodness and loveliness in the world. I don't know. It was just a very weird period. But that was also then when I started the modelling, and I would be working 5 days a week, 5 nights a week, weekends. I would just throw myself into work, I think, in anything to not think about it. And it's only something recently I've found that was a coping mechanism, that's why I was doing that. And also just like, I think, like you say, to kind of like find myself a little bit, like to see what I was comfortable with. You know, someone I remember once saying to me, like, how could you feel comfortable going into like strangers' homes? And like, it was something I guess I couldn't answer in a way, because it was like, I just didn't even think of that in a way. I don't know. It was a very weird time. And I didn't really realize how weird it was until recently. But that was then where going to counselling was important. So I was doing that through that period until I went traveling. And then I decided to put like a stop on it when I went traveling, because I was thinking, if I go traveling, I'm going to find myself, I'm going to be this new person because I can just be me and all that sort of stuff. So after I then got back from traveling, so I was 24. And then that year, my sister was like, why don't you do a beauty pageant? So her friend did Miss Universe. So there's Miss Universe Great Britain. And the modelling had like taken off and things like that, like it was working. So I guess I was feeling kind of good. I was feeling like, okay, yeah, like actually maybe I can do this. It's Miss Universe is very much like an empowerment system. Like it's all about female empowerment, and like it's not what you look like that defines you, it's what's below the surface. Like, and that's something I'm like, when you said in your intro, I was like, oh, I love that. Like that's kind of what they stand for. So I went and did that, and that was when I did my first empowerment day. And I'll never forget it. It was this was, I think, my
your first empowerment day, and that was through the pageants.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was funny actually, so I remember when I rocked up to my interview, for the initial stage to get into the pageant, I turned up in like leggings, a little stripy t-shirt, like hardly any makeup. I just kind of went just super like chilled. And then all the other girls like literally turned up in like heels and dresses and like all done up, and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. Like
I'm out of my league.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, like this is just not me. I was like, no, I was like, oh, whatever. But then I went into the interview, and I think I was just at the point, I was like, I'm ready to just like move on with my life. I just want to be me. And I was just like, I really feel like this can help me, and just did all this. And the lady who runs the pageant, she said there was just something in you that day. She's like, I knew you needed to be in it. Like, even though you weren't dressed up to the nines, you came in your leggings and your striped t-shirt. And now when girls go for interviews, they go in jeans and t-shirts.
Amazing.
People don't care about the fakeness, man. Individuals need to understand that. People want to see authenticity, people that's genuine. And from the start, where we reached out to you, that's what we felt. We felt your authenticity. We could have reached out to dozens of individuals to do this show, but something about your story and you and who you are spoke to us, right, Gina? So that's why we had you on. So I think that's what the same thing we seen in you is the same thing that individual saw in you that day. Be honest.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely that light. You know, it's I think a little bit cliche, but I think that when you have that light and you aren't afraid of it, and you're like, this is just who I am, it sparks something in other people too, because so many people are afraid to be who they are, and so many people are afraid to speak their truth. And when they see somebody come out and speak their truth and be real, it's like inspirational. It's like, oh, I could do that too. Look at this person showing up. They look like me. They're in jeans, or they're in leggings and a t-shirt. I wear leggings and a t-shirt. You know, it's like, you're me, I'm you, and like I could do that too. And I think that's what draws people to you, is you're just like, I'm just who I am, and you know, and like you can be who you are too, and it's great. What I'm hearing from your story as well is that this situation that happened was part of your story, is part of your story, and that it isn't something that made you who you are, but you are who you are despite what happened to you, and that you continue to hold on to your passions, and you continue to hold on to your strength through all of the things that tried to break you. And I just have to say that that's absolutely beautiful, and I'm so glad that you didn't let that break you, and that you continue to push forward and to continue to be an inspiration to others as well. So Cheers to you, for persevering.
Thank you. That literally like makes me feel like really warm. Like my cheeks feel a bit hot now.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
Blushing, that's the word, isn't it?
Yeah. So Alexa, so you went through this empowerment group. Part of your treatment, right? You said you went through phases where you wanted to become a model. You went through different treatments. You traveled the world. You finally found this empowerment group through beauty pageants that your sister told you, like, hey, I think this is your niche. You should do that. And after you went through that empowerment speech, how did that transition you into finding and going out on your own and becoming a trauma champion and pushing that message and starting that organization for other women just like you?
So basically, when the day happened, I didn't realize until that day how much, in a sense, I was still letting it hold me back. I still pushed through. I still got on with life. I still, tried to work on things I wanted to work on, but it wasn't until that day. And it's kind of the same things, maybe like what you were saying just then, that the coach on the day, he's quite a big name in the sort of like coaching industry now, and he said there was just something. He was like, there's just something when you put your hand up. There was something in your eyes. And I'll never forget the moment, because there was, he asked everyone, who's been through something, but they felt like they couldn't be who they are. And that sort of situation in a way did make me feel like I couldn't, because I went through this lost period. So I just put my hand up, and I very tentatively put it up because I was like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. I was just like, and then I just kind of raised it like so high, and the girl in front of me had her hand up, and he pointed to the girl, and then she went to stand up and was like, no, you sit down, the girl behind. And I literally was like, I was like, this is me. I was like, oh my God. And I was like really nervous. And I then went to the front, and basically the technique he had done was a £10 note technique, and where like, how much is this £10 worth? And then scrunched it up, and was like, how much is it worth now? Still £10. How much if I scrunch it this height? £10. So if I put it on the floor and I stamp on it, how much is it worth? £10. And it's like, no matter what you go through, you're still worth who you are. Like, know your worth. It doesn't matter, because and I literally stood there and I started like running off, and I was like, oh my God, I was like, this is horrendous. But it was that day, that moment, I was like, shit, yeah. Like, it doesn't matter what I've been through, and it doesn't matter how much I feel like I've gone through stuff, I can still be who I am. And it's kind of like what you were touching on a minute ago, like my massive quote now, and it was actually something my sister said to me during that time, and I've just hung on to it this day. It's like, your past doesn't define who you are. Like, it doesn't. And it's totally right. It's a part of my journey, and it's a part of, there's certain things about me that I know are because of my past, but it doesn't define me. It's just a part of me. Like, I am still who I am. And it's just that day in particular just really honed in on that. And I was like, wow. I was like, this is amazing. I was like, this is what I've needed. This is where I knew I needed the next step to move forward. Like, I'd done the counseling and therapy. I was just like, I'm ready for something else. I just didn't know what it was. So during that day, I actually then contacted my my counselling service, and I said, I've done this day. It was literally epic. I now feel like a whole new person. I was like, can I run one of these days with the survivors? And they kindly declined. And I was like, but if I really felt that helped me, then why can't I do it for them, sort of thing?
Yeah, you found your passion.
Yeah, and I kind of I think I found what it was that was missing for me. And I was like, well, maybe that's what's missing for other girls too. Yeah. So it was then like an idea that I'd had. Then I guess I sat on the idea maybe for like 3 years, and obviously being told no, you do sometimes then withdraw. But I had also spoke to them about creating like an empowerment booklet for when you're going through the court process, because like, I don't think anything can really prepare you for that. But also just holding strong to yourself and staying true to why you're there, I think is really important. Awesome. And I was like, and I started to work on it.
The coaching techniques to help you through the process, when you're mentally down or you feel like you can't get through it, to keep you going.
Yeah, it's kind of almost like a little empowerment self-care booklet, basically. Right. So I started to work on that, and they were going to fund it and stuff like that. But sadly, at the time, it did I had like a don't want to say relapse, but like I did it. I couldn't do it. It just took me back to those times of being in court. I just wasn't ready. So I was like, I'm just going to have to put a pause on it. And then I guess spent a couple of years just sort of just trying to live life a little bit like just for me without the sort of chaos of feeling lost and various other things. So I actually did a podcast. So I've been very fortunate through my work to meet lots of interesting people, both through my baby work and the modelling. And one family in particular, I've been like a regular nanny for them once a month for sort of like 5 years. So I've got a really good connection with them. And she does trauma work with prisoners. So she does a lot of rehabilitation, and she started what's called the Clink, and it's basically restaurants within the prisons, and they put prisoners through the rehab. And I remember up until that point before I met her, I was like, you know, all people are bad and prisoners are bad and they deserve to be there, because obviously my mentality was like, that's what I wanted for my guy. So
wow, that's an interesting twist to that. I like how you tied that in.
Yeah, so like that was definitely, you know, then she opened my eyes a little bit. Like even people who've had bad pasts, you know, they still deserve hope in a way. And she was like, should we go to one for breakfast? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay. I was like, maybe like this is just another step for me to sort of just help me, I guess, just to, you know, understand humans and people and stuff in a way. So we went to one, it's called Brixton Prison in Brixton. I don't know if you've heard of like London in terms of Brixton's kind of like quite a rough area. And
oh no, I did not. So Brixton is the hood?
I mean, I'd say when people think of Brixton, it's quite a rough area, but also I love Brixton. Like it's so buzzy and it's so vibey, and it's a really cool place.
Yeah,
actually lived not far from there, like when I first moved to London. So it's still like an amazing place of London. But the
hoods usually are.
yeah, that's true. So we went there, and I'll never forget it. I was shaking so much. Like to go through their prison, like security, you have to go into like this bit where it becomes like a pen. So you've got this massive door that closes behind you, and then you've got another pull down door in front of you. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in here now. I was like, oh my God. And I literally was like unbelievably shaking, so nervous. And then we went into this restaurant, and there was this guy that served us, and he was a mixed race guy. And when we were in the cafe, the guy, he came over and he served us the food, and he was like shaking so much. And I said to her, I was like, he's shaking more than me. And she was like, this is more nerve-wracking for them, because you are the outsiders. You are the people that, you know, like they've got to impress in a way, because they want to show to you that they are worthy people. Yeah, they're worthy. And yeah, it was amazing. It literally was just such an eye-opening experience.
So it actually did something to you. It made you understand the other side, like as a criminal, I guess the criminal mind.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of, in some sense, I went through, after I did the empowerment day, I then went and did a life coaching course. So this sort of stuff all happened, I guess, at the same time. And when I did the life coaching course, we talked about the 5 human needs. And for me, that was almost like a real, not a coping, I think what the word is, like something that gave me a way to understand why the guy did what he did. Because for me, I was like, he's lacking connection, he's lacking love, he's lacking power, he's lacking all these things that for him, the only way he could get those things was to do what he did. And for me, that was just, it was just something that I guess helped me to try and understand, because you always have questions, don't you? Why me? Why? Yeah. And that was just almost in a sense like, but it's not about me, it's about him. Like it's his state of mind, it's his learning, it's his whatever.
That's such a powerful moment to come to, I think. I want to stop there for a moment, because as a victim, there's so much, like you say, fear and trauma and whys and just all of this, everything that happens. And I think it's so difficult to have empathy, to find empathy for your abuser. But at the same time, like, understand the empathy, but also understand that there has to be consequences. It's not like, oh, I understand that, like, you know, you didn't maybe have support or love, or, you know, the things that you needed growing up in your life, and that's what led to you doing this. So it's okay. It's still not okay.
Yeah.
But I understand. And that can help you as a victim, like you said, like, have a little bit more understanding, or a little bit more empathy, or just a little bit more closure, like you said, to say, this had nothing to do with me. This was all about you and what happened to you and the things that you didn't work through.
Yeah.
And that it's like shit rolls downhill kind of thing. Like, that ended up resulting in this horrible thing that happened to me because horrible things happened to you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That was like a moment. I think the two kind of happened at the same time, of like learning about those needs for people and learning about how people tend to get themselves into these situations in the first place. And it was just because you hold so much of it onto you. And I think especially going through the court process, like, you are literally dragged through the mud, and to try and come out of that not blaming yourself, that just gave me so much like, oh no, it's not me. So it was a really powerful moment, actually.
From that moment of being in the restaurant to and finally having that understanding of being empathetic for your abuser, what then led you to starting the Trauma Champions?
So it was this lady that I went to the prison and stuff with, and who does the work. She runs a podcast called Justice, and I was really passionate about sort of, you know, the criminal system and how it makes you feel and everything like that, that we got into this like really great conversation one day, and she was like, do you want to come on my podcast? And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, yeah, I think I'm actually ready. I think I've gone through enough that I think I always had it deep down as well. Like, I don't know if this is just like a survivor's thing, but I did that thing of comparing, and, you know, everyone says you shouldn't, but I was a little bit like, mine wasn't horrific. Like, it was horrific, but it wasn't, you know, I wasn't beaten around. There was just so many things that in my mind, I kind of like justified in a way that it wasn't that bad. So if I can take what I've gone through and what I've learned to help others, then I really want to do that. And it was kind of something that gave me also a little bit of like strength to move forward. Like, I can do this. Like, I can make something of it that's like healthy in a way, like, you know, good. Right. So I went and did the podcast, and oh my God, it was awful. It was so bad. Listening back to it now, I literally hate it, because I don't know whether it was because it was talking about it out loud, or if it was the fact that I felt like I was being interviewed, kind of. And the last time I ever had an interview about that conversation was
when you was interrogated. Oh, yeah.
So I was just, I didn't realise until I listened back. I was like laughing through it, but like nervous laughing, like the whole time. It was just horrendous. Like, I couldn't talk about it like in this way at all. And I was like, oh my God, like, how awful was that? But from doing that podcast, I then met another girl who'd done a podcast, and it's actually quite like a well-known podcast here. There's a lady called Fern Cotton, and she does what's called The Happy Place, and it's all about these sort of stories, and, you know, how you can still live a, you know, fulfilled life and all this sort of thing. And this girl on there, she's called oh my God, literally just had an absolute mind blank. Called Grace. I was going to say Fern, but no, Fern runs it, and Grace was the guest, and she then talked about her story. And my sister was like, reach out to her, like, you've done a podcast, like, you could start having a conversation with other survivors. And I was like, no. I was like, she's not going to want to meet me, like, she's, you know, amazing and all this kind of stuff. So my sister was like, I'm doing it for you. And then basically did it. And I then met her like a couple of days later, and honestly, that conversation was probably the conversation I've been waiting for a long time. Like, I know how you feel, all the stuff that you're like, wow, I really am not alone. And I had, obviously, when I was first counselling, been offered group counselling, but the idea of sitting around in a circle just really intimidated me. I was like, nah. I was like, I'm just not ready for that, no. But talking on one-on-one with a survivor in the way of like being able to talk about your experiences was just so amazing. So I think that having that conversation, having done the podcast, I was like, okay, I would love to create something where survivors can come together, feel empowered, feel connection, and just feel like, actually, it's okay. Like, this has happened, but it's not your life. Like, you can move forward, you can still live a healthy and happy life with that. Like, and I think the trauma champions, in terms of what the goal is with it, it's to give, you know, survivors that space to come together, but it's not that you have to talk about it, because that's what I didn't want. Like, it's just being able to do stuff that makes you feel good, is practical. Like, you can still use these things that, you know, the journaling is one of the sessions. So it's like, you can use this as a way to move forward, but you're with people that know how you feel, but you're not obliged to talk about it.
I love that. And that's so powerful too, because I think that when you've gone through that type of trauma, there's so many people who are like, oh, you just need to put that behind you. You need to move on with your life, you know, or they'll like give you advice. And it's like, you don't know what that experience is like. Like, you can talk about, and they mean well. A lot of people mean well, but like, unless you've gone through it, it's so difficult to understand. And so to have somebody who has gone through a similar experience validate you, it adds a level of normalcy, I think, to your life, where you don't feel dirty, you don't feel like it's your fault. Well, maybe you do, but like it helps to break those things down, and like you said, to help you realize, like, oh, this is normal. I'm not a freak now. I'm not dirty. I'm not, you know, all of these horrible things that I think about myself that would then prevent me from going on and pursuing my dreams. Like, I can get that career, I can go to college, I can have a boyfriend girlfriend relationship, whatever it is after this, because I actually am okay and can be okay. So that's amazing that you're providing survivors a space to be able to do that and to be able to talk about that. I absolutely love that. That is so powerful.
I agree. And I want to second that. It's powerful what you're doing. Absolutely. But Gina, I want to ask you a question. So I know that throughout this happy hour, your feedback been more personal. It seemed like, correct me if I'm wrong. And I know you kind of touched on your experiences within this space in the past. Can you provide some deeper conversation on how, like, your experience and how you was able to overcome the situation and experiences that you went through?
Yeah. So it's interesting too, I think, because like you were saying, Alexa, everybody has a different story. Some people feel like, oh, well, maybe mine wasn't as traumatic or whatever. But I think throughout this, there is kind of a thread of commonality of those feelings that you go through, and the processes that you go through, regardless of whether you pursue, you know, legal action or you don't, or, you know, however you come out of that. There's so many feelings and experiences that I think that we as victims all go through, and that connect us, which is why, again, I think what you're doing is so powerful. So for me, I was raped from, again, I have a really hard time remembering, because I was so young and it was such a traumatic experience, somewhere between the ages of 5 and 10, somewhere around there, like 6 and 9, 5 and 10. And it wasn't a stranger, it was somebody close to me, and they were 6 years older. I didn't know what it was. Like, I didn't understand that it was a bad thing until I got a little bit older. And the individual told me that, you know, I needed to keep it to myself, or that they would get in trouble. I didn't really understand what that meant, but I also didn't have a really great relationship with my parents. I kind of associated it with the idea of, like, oh, well, my parents won't really let us watch like Disney movies, Aladdin, like they overreact about that, you know, so they'll just overreact about this. Like, it's something completely innocent, but it's something that they would make a big deal about, so we just can't talk about it. And as I got older, I started to feel physically ill about it. I was the one who stopped it, because I was just like, something just doesn't feel well. So the person wanted to continue to engage, and I started to, as far as I can remember, just started to kind of avoid them. At one point, they got into a relationship. Being 6 years older than me, they were about 15, 16 years old. They got into a relationship, and I was like, you know, I feel like the person that you're dating would feel weird about this. Like, something's just not.
As a 7-year-old, you already was able to.
Well, so I was about 9 or 10 at that point.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, but I still quite didn't understand what was happening, but I knew that something wasn't right. And so I was like, you know, I'm just going to avoid this situation as much as possible. And so as I got older, I started to become very physically ill when I hit puberty, because I had no idea how sex worked. I thought that I was pregnant at a certain point. I started like punching myself in the stomach, hoping that I would cause myself to have an abortion if I was pregnant, even though it was like, 5 years after the abuse had ended, like, because I had no idea. I had no idea how it happened. And then when I was about 16 years old, I started self-harm. I became really depressed. I was researching methods of suicide. And I ended up opening up to my sister and told her what had happened. And she let me know that I needed to tell my parents what had happened. And so I did. And I told my mom first. She was upset. She didn't really know what to say or how to react. But she said, you have to tell your father. And so I told my dad, and his reaction was, boys will be boys. And he got up and he walked out of my room. And that was pretty much the foundation of how I began to process that trauma. Because I felt that I didn't have the support or the basis to feel upset about it, that it was somehow my fault because I was a female and boys will be boys and that's just what boys do. And that was okay because, if a boy wanted to treat me like that, then that's normal. So I struggled with that for a very long time. And I did not end up seeing a therapist until I was 22. And I was going through a divorce with my first husband. And I ended up seeing a therapist. And by that time, I had talked to friends. I had talked to other people about it. And I kind of I could easily recount what had happened and the events of the situation, almost like a history story. I was like, oh yeah, in 1840, this thing happened. And it was just like, it was a thing that happened in history. But it wasn't until I saw this therapist who asked me the question, what happened to you? And I explained what happened to her. Like I had tons of other times before. And she looked at me and she said, so that's what happened to you, but how did that make you feel? How did that impact you? What did that change for you? And I broke down crying when she asked me that question because I had never been asked that question before. Nobody asked me how that made me feel. Many people had asked me what happened, but nobody asked me how it made me feel. And that it made it real for me, I think, because I had to connect to those emotions and I had to go back and really think about how that had impacted me and changed my life. So since then, I have been in therapy for the past 9-10 years and really worked through a lot of that trauma and worked through a lot of those situations and feelings and everything. Like it's taken a long time. But similar to you, Alexa, I eventually hit a point where I was like, this is my truth. This is something that happened to me. This is part of my history, but it doesn't define who I am. There are moments that I've had in relationships with men where I've had that PTSD, where it's come up and I've panicked or I've had a panic attack or, whatever it is. Like that's part of life for me now. But also that's okay because I know how to cope and I know how to work through it. And through that also, I am able to reach out to others and to try to help them work through their pain so that they are not keeping it a secret for 10 years and that they making sure that they do have the support that I didn't feel like I had and helping them find the resources that they need, which I think is so important because I was homeschooled. I didn't have supportive parents. I didn't have many friends. I lived in a town of 300 people. So I didn't have resources. So I had to go into survival mode to say okay, this is my life now. And I had the choice to either live or not. And I chose to live and, you just kind of figure it out after that. So like I said, it inspires me so much that you have taken your pain and the things that have happened to you and turned that into an opportunity for others to heal and to connect and to move forward, because that's exactly something that I needed at the time that I think other people definitely need. I absolutely applaud you for that. It's beautiful. So, as a survivor myself too, thank you so much for your work.
Yo, I want to raise a toast to both of you all. not victims, but definitely survivors and definitely trauma champions. Cheers to you two.
Cheers. Oh, like, honestly, Gina, like, how you then turned that back on me at the end, like, just a moment for you. Like, it's amazing, you know, you're still here today, and that is like true testament to you and your strength, like, to go through that. And especially when you went through that period of, you know, suicide attempts, like, that's deep, like, you know, and to be able to still be here today and now doing what you're doing is just incredible. And it's like, this is the kind of stuff that I think is so important to get out there now. Like, you're going to go through this really shit time. Like, everyone goes through different processes after, and like you say, that's where the connection comes in, because then at least if you can see people who have been able to move forward and rebuild, and you can still live that life, like, that's, I think, what's important. Like, you can keep going. It's hard, it's shit, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but like, this is why I just love this kind of stuff. Like, it's just amazing. And like, well done to you for being able to speak up. And, you know, like, I can't imagine how it would have felt to not have had that support. It's just about, you know, knowing that you can move forward, and it's just amazing. You know, you put that work in, like, you've done that. Like, that must have been really hard. And I feel sad in the sense that you didn't have that support, like that kind of language. And I think that's where nowadays, having platforms like social media, there's a lot of people trying to put out there of, you know, how you should talk to survivors or how you can support them. Like, for your dad to say those things, it kind of shows the mentality of a lot of men. And I think that's one of the biggest things that needs to be changed, is like, that kind of falls under the rape culture thing. Like, that's not okay. Like, that's not how you should define what's just happened to your daughter. Like, that's so not okay. And just, you know, the whole, this is what you should do, or this is, you should tell your father. Like, but actually, no, maybe what if I don't want to? Like, why can't, you know? And I just think that it's amazing that you've then been able to push through it in your own ways and get your help how you have. It's just so amazing. So, you know, well done to you.
And Alexa, I absolutely agree with you, man. I think for Gina to be here today, when I first met Gina, until she disclosed that on the show, I never knew anything about that. I just seen a strong, confident, intelligent woman. And I didn't know about all of the scars and the backgrounds. I mean, all of the scars and the things that that she has hidden, you know what I'm saying, that created and made her what she is today. Like you said, it wasn't bad things and it didn't define her. It was those key experiences that make her that strong and confident woman that I seen when her and I met. So it's the same to you. When I met you, I'm like, man, this woman looked like a confident young lady. And it's funny because as I scroll through your page and research you, if you never disclosed that you was a trauma champion, no one would ever know that, because your confidence and the way you carry yourself seems like a aggressive person, and I would never know that you was an introvert. So now, okay, so trauma champions, you explained to us like basically how it was created, kind of what y'all do. Can you kind of elaborate on what it is y'all do, and where it is y'all do, and like the basics behind your organization?
Sure. So the sort of like the why of it is to do the empowerment and self-love and well-being of, you know, being a survivor. Like, you can use these tools to move forward. And because obviously I still think therapy and everything is really important, but it's also just to know that it's actually kind of like some everyday stuff that's really important to how you can move forward and build yourself. So it's not a replacement to therapy. It's more like an enhancement. So you should do therapy and trauma champions, correct? Yeah, it's just another tool. It's another option of you being able to use these things, you know, because I still see a therapist, but it's just a case of, I needed that talking, but I needed other stuff. I didn't just want to talk about it all the time. I wanted stuff to help in my own way. And especially
it's like going to the gym and doing leg day all the time. It's like, well, you need to work some other parts of your body too.
Yeah, it's to be able to have something else to be able to use. I've put together so far 5 different workshops, but I'm calling them huddles, because I don't want them to be that workshops. I feel are more like a teaching approach, and also don't want to be that it's just a get together. Like, there's still an activity involved. And the word huddle for me kind of, it's a coming together of like, you know, you huddle, like, it makes me think of penguins like protecting each other in the storm, and like that's just it's the perfect word for me. So, and all of the huddles are basically to do with empowerment, but all with a purpose of helping you to use it. So the first one is the journal. So you decorate your own journal. I found it really tough finding journals that like were me. And that was one of the things that my therapist suggested. It was like, find one that's you. And I was like, well, this is just slowing down my process of being able to get shit out, because like I can't find one.
Do you have like your own journal that you created?
Yeah, so it's like you get like a blank journal, so it's got like the pages in, and then you use lots of different craft stuff to then basically make it like you. So I have like massive like a range of different
nice.
Products and like different colors, and so you can just decorate it to your taste.
If our viewers or our audience would like to do one, or would they have to? The only way they could participate in that is join your one of your workshops, or how can they do it? Do you have like a YouTube explaining that process, or?
Yeah, doing a YouTube video is probably a really good idea. Here in the UK, the idea was that I was literally just about to launch doing the huddles, but then obviously COVID, we can't do like get-togethers. So, and that kind of took away sort of the essence of what I wanted. But I'm being supported through the Prince's Trust, which is like a huge organisation here to help, build businesses and stuff like that. So they encourage.
What is that, like funding? They provide funding?
Yeah, so and it's just a really good way. It's like mentoring basically, so they help you with all your next steps. And they then obviously encouraged me to do it remotely because of the COVID and the lockdown. So the idea is that you get sent a package with your blank journal, a different mixture of craft materials, and then we do it on Zoom together. So it's just then we sit, we create these journals together. If we want to chat, we can, because also there's such a huge connection with doing creative activities for your mindset and things like that. So, and that for me is a massive, I'm so creative, like that's a massive thing for me. So I was like, I can just bring all these things together, and it's just amazing. Yeah. So that's like one of them. Another one is doing affirmations. I'm a huge believer in affirmations and how that can start your day. So to create your own affirmation card, and then you'll get like a little photo holder, and you put it up each day and you change it and you pick one that goes with your mood. So every morning you've got something positive to start with. Another one is then an empowerment bag. So everyone has these little tote bags now, don't they? Like, bag for life things, and it'll then have like different empowerment statements on it, but you create the statement and you decorate it, and that's something. And then another one is an arts one, and then the last one is a vision board. So what you want moving forward. There was a few takes on that because I used to find doing vision boards like an angry to make like an angry one and just like stick stuff on it, and just a way to express your emotions basically, and that's the final one. So there are five different huddles, and it's just now to get those out there and get people involved really. So hopefully it's a feel good factor of you can partake in something that you don't have to focus on what you've been through, but you've been through the same as people in the room. So that's the goal.
I love that.
I love it too. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So how will someone in the United States? So I know you UK based, but I believe that you're like a global organization. How will someone in US? How can they be involved in your efforts and your push that you're doing in Trauma Champions?
As of yet, no, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. So especially with the huddles that are being done virtually, especially because of the current climate, the way that I'm doing it is that you can book onto either one or like all five, and then I send you the different things that you need. So they run on like a 5-week rotation, and then there's a break for 4 weeks, and then the next 5-week rotation happens. So, if somebody wanted to join in on the next 5 weeks, I've got 4 weeks to ship the stuff if they wanted to. So
worldwide, open it.
Yeah, 100%.
Alexa, so our last question for you today is, what's next for you?
So it's to definitely keep working, obviously, on the Trauma Champions, getting it out there as much as possible, and having this opportunity has been massive for me. So I really, really appreciate that. I do also run another business, which is a baby sleep business. I basically help parents get their babies into routines and sleeping through the night. I'm trained in it, so it's kind of the two together work really well. So
that's nice. Is that a global thing as well? Is that something that they could partake via Zoom, or is that something that's more a one-on-one, personal, UK driven?
No, it's a mixture. I've helped clients abroad. So because I do a lot of that actually remotely anyway through e-support, so it's like WhatsApp and stuff like that. Obviously, we'd have to figure out time differences and how it'd work. But in terms of sort of phone consultations and stuff like that, I do that. I do that globally, and then also do workshops via Zoom. So that's the other thing. So I'm a busy lady, but you know, just keep moving forward with them both, and yeah, that's the goals at the moment.
Awesome.
Amazing. Click those links below. Baby's Business, Trauma Champions. You want to book her for a modeling gig?
Yeah, and that as well. Yeah,
exactly. She got so much going on. She a jack of all trades. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate you being here, sharing your story, being vulnerable and humble with us. Appreciate your effort and what you're doing for society. Again, Gina and I, we built this platform, Toast with the Coaches, but to show perspectives to allow individuals from all walks of life to come to one platform to provide their perspectives, and for other individuals to listen to those perspectives and then provide their perspectives via the comments, so we can have shared experiences and listen to each other instead of fighting. So thank you for what you're doing. We really appreciate it. But before you leave, this is what we call our thing of the week. During our thing of the week, this is where Gina and I provide our viewers with a quote or a message or some type of inspiration that they could take with them moving forward until the next time we see them. Without further ado, it's my turn. So for my thing for the week is this. My thing for the week is inspired by our conversation today. I would say, individuals, what are your 1 year, your 2 year, 3 year, and 10-year goals? Do you know them? I challenge you to think about those goals and to regurgitate those goals. More times than none, you can't. The reason why you can't is because they're not written down. 76% of successful people stated that they have goals, and those goals are viewed on a weekly basis. Those goals are reviewed on a weekly basis because those goals are tangible. They're written down. They get to see them, touch them, feel them. Alexa mentioned earlier about cards of words of affirmation and cards. Those things are tangible things that you are able to see, touch, and remind yourself who you are, just like written goals. So I challenge you all, and my thing for the week is this. Identify your 1 year, your 3 year, 5 year, and 10-year goals. In between defining those goals, define those gaps that will lead you between that 1 year to that 3 year goal. What is that gap? Identify that as well. That gap between that 3 to that 10-year goal, identify that gap. Understand that it's not only the goals that you're setting, it's the action and the plan to get there. If you don't know that action or that plan, I could definitely help you. Check the link below. I could help you with that transition. If you don't understand those boundaries and you need to set boundaries before you get in there, holla at Coach Gina. Either way, we got you covered. I appreciate you. Role Model Life Coaching, Coach Phoenix. And I'm out. Coach Gina.
I love it, Phoenix. It's so good. And I'm also taking that challenge upon myself because you're right. I don't have my 10-year goal. I've 1 and 3, but 5 and 10, that's so far out that I haven't physically written that down. So I think that's something I'm going to take upon myself this weekend to awesome. Take a look at over the next couple of days.
That's what we here for. Teach each other things, you know?
Yeah.
I'm always learning from you. So I'm glad you finally get to learn from me. Alexa, man, I tell you, this always one.
Well, I'm going to teach you some more stuff via Brene Brown. My thing of the week is a quote from Brene Brown that I wanted to share with everybody that I absolutely loved reading this week. You can't take criticism and feedback from people who are not being brave with their lives. The deal is that you have to be very specific about people whose opinion of you matter. It's not that you don't give a shit what anyone thinks. Just don't give a shit what some people think. And then really solicit feedback from people that do give you good feedback. And you know who makes that list? People who like you, not despite your imperfections and vulnerability, but because of your imperfections and vulnerability.
Oh, I love that.
That's fire. Gina tried to outdo me. You see that, Alexa? She tried to outdo me. She always learning me something, man. That was fire, Gina. That was I personally appreciate that poem because I live my life by that. I live my life by, and you know, we mentioned this on numerous times on previous episodes about having that support circle. I have expectation and faith, and I'm vulnerable to individuals within my circle. My circle is not large. I feel like less is more. However, I do open myself to that criticism, because when I win, they win. And when I lose, they lose, because they have those vested interests in me. So when they speak and they provide me with those critiques or that feedback, I understand it, and I'm vulnerable enough to accept it, because I know they care about my well-being. So thank you, Renee Brown. Thank you, Gina, for bringing that to our attention. And thank you, Alexa, London's own, a credible trauma champion, for joining us today. We appreciate you, subscribers. I hope you enjoyed her the way we enjoyed this interview and this happy hour. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being with us. Coach Phoenix, Coach Gina, Alexa, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Those with the coaches, and we out. Cheers.
Cheers.